The human sat in our interrogation chamber, bleeding from wounds that should have killed him 3 times over. And he was laughing. Not the maniacal cackle of a broken mind, mind you. No, this was something far more unsettling. This was the low, rumbling chuckle of someone who knew a secret that made our entire war fleet seem like children playing with toy ships. You think this is funny, human? I clicked my mandibles in what I hoped was a threatening manner. My species, the Corvan, had been the terror of 17 star systems before we encountered Earth. Now, looking at this battered specimen of humanity, I wondered if we had made a terrible mistake. "Oh, Thrix," he said, somehow knowing my name despite never meeting me. "You have no idea how funny this is." The human's name was Marcus Kane. According to our intelligence, he had been a simple farmer on a backwater colony called Haven's Rest. A nobody, a speck of dust in the cosmic wind. Yet here he was, captured from the bridge of a human dreadnought that had single-handedly destroyed half our advance fleet. "Tell me," I leaned forward, my forearms folding across my carapace. "What exactly do you find so amusing about your situation?" Marcus wiped blood from his split lip with the back of his hand. His eyes, an unsettling shade of blue that seemed to shift in the light, met mine without flinching. "You want to know what's funny? You came to our little colony thinking you were apex predators. You glassed our cities, killed our families, turned our children into ash." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And you thought we would just roll over and die. Your species did die," I reminded him, though something cold was beginning to coil in my stomach. "Heaven's Rest is nothing but radioactive dust. Your entire colony. Extinct." "Yeah." Marcus nodded slowly. "You killed my wife, Emma. My daughter, Lucy. My son, Jamie." Each name fell like a stone into still water. They were having breakfast when your ships arrived. Emma was laughing at something Lucy said. Jamie was complaining about his scrambled eggs being too runny. The human's voice remained steady, conversational even, but his hands, I noticed, had begun to tremble. Not with fear, with something else entirely. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, and meant it. The Corvan were conquerors, not monsters. We took worlds for resources, not for the joy of killing. But war is war. Your species resisted. We responded. Responded, Marcus repeated, tasting the word like it was poison. "Is that what you call it? Because where I come from, we call it murder. Where you come from no longer exists," I pointed out. That's when Marcus smiled. Really smiled. And every instinct I had developed over 30 years of military service began screaming at me to run. "See, that's where you are wrong, Thrix. Heaven's Rest was never my home. It was just where I was hiding." The interrogation chamber's lights flickered. Outside, I could hear the distant hum of our ship's engines, the quiet chatter of crew members going about their duties. Normal sounds. Peaceful sounds. They felt like a lie now. "Hiding from what?" I asked, though I was no longer sure I wanted to know. "From myself," Marcus said simply. "From what I used to be. From what I did during the last war." The last war. I consulted my data pad. Human records show no major conflicts in the past century. Your species has been at peace. "Oh, we have been at peace," Marcus agreed. "But peace and forgetting are two very different things. You see, Thrix, there was a time when humans fought humans. When we turned our weapons on each other with a creativity that would make your species weep. We got very, very good at killing. So good that we scared ourselves." He shifted in his restraints, and I noticed for the first time that they were military grade, the kind designed to hold beings 3 times his size. Why had my subordinates used such heavy security on a simple farmer? After the Unity Wars ended, Marcus continued, we made a choice. We locked away our weapons. We disbanded our armies. We swore never to let that darkness loose again. Most of us retired to quiet lives, farming, teaching, raising families. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "But you kept your soldiers, didn't you?" I said. We encountered resistance. Planetary Defense Forces, Marcus nodded. Volunteers with basic training and outdated equipment. Good people doing their best to protect their homes. They lasted about as long as you'd expect against a species that had been conquering worlds for millennia. Then how, I said, my voice barely a whisper, did you destroy 12 of our capital ships? Marcus looked at me with something that might have been pity. Because, Thrix, you didn't just kill civilians, you killed the one thing that was keeping me human. The lights flickered again. This time, they stayed dim. I was a weapons designer during the Unity Wars, Marcus said, conversationally. Specifically, I designed ways to make ships kill other ships very, very efficiently. The Emma-class destroyer was my masterpiece, named after my wife, if you can believe the irony. 67 of them were built. 67 were destroyed or decommissioned after the war ended. 67, I repeated numbly. Well, Marcus tilted his head. 66 were decommissioned. You see, I kept one, hidden in a pocket dimension that I designed myself. I told myself it was just nostalgia, a reminder of what we used to be, what we promised never to be again. The ship's engines were no longer humming. I realized with growing horror that I could no longer hear the chatter of my crew. When your ships arrived at Haven's Rest, Marcus continued, I made a choice. I could hide in my basement like a good retired soldier and let my family die, or I could remember what I used to be. The ship that destroyed our advanced fleet, I said, though I already knew the answer. Emma's Revenge, Marcus nodded. Not the most creative name, I will admit, but it seemed appropriate. You see, Thrix, the Emma class wasn't just a destroyer. It was a ship designed by someone who understood that humans don't just fight to win. We fight to ensure our enemies never threaten us again. Impossible, I breathed. One ship cannot defeat an entire fleet. One ship, Marcus laughed, and the sound sent ice through my veins. Oh, Thrix, you still don't understand. The Emma class wasn't designed to fight fleets. It was designed to fight entire civilizations. The lights went out completely. In the darkness, I heard Marcus's voice, still calm, still conversational. You know what the funny thing is? After Emma and the kids died, I thought I had nothing left to lose. I thought I was fighting for revenge. But sitting here talking to you, I realized something. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a hellish red glow. Marcus's restraints hung empty. He was standing behind me. I wasn't fighting for revenge, he whispered in my ear. I was fighting to make sure no other father has to watch his family burn. How? I managed to ask. Because, Thrix, when you killed my family, you didn't just wake up one retired soldier. You woke up the entire human military-industrial complex. Every hidden weapon, every classified project, every nightmare we promised to forget. The ship shuddered around us. In the distance, I could hear the sound of metal screaming as it was torn apart. My species has been at peace for 100 years, Marcus said. We have been raising families, growing crops, writing poetry. We have been human. But you know what humans are really good at? I turned to face him, my forearms raised in a futile defensive posture. We are really good at remembering how to stop being human when we need to. The last thing I saw before the bulkhead collapsed was Marcus Kane, covered in blood and smiling like a man who had just figured out the punchline to a joke that had been building for a century, a joke that was about to end a war. I woke up in what used to be my flagship's medical bay. Now it looked like someone had fed it through a meat grinder and then apologized to the meat grinder for the insult. Ah, Thrix, you are awake. The voice came from somewhere to my left, calm and measured. Human. I was wondering when you'd join her. I tried to sit up and immediately regretted every life choice that had led me to this moment. My carapace was cracked in 17 places, my secondary arms were in regenerative casts, and my pride was somewhere in the vicinity of a black hole. Marcus Kane, I managed to croak. You are supposed to be dead. So are you, he pointed out reasonably. Yet here we are, having a conversation. Life's funny that way. The medical bay was darker than it should have been. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across twisted metal and shattered equipment. Through a gaping hole in the bulkhead, I could see the void of space. We were no longer moving. "My ship," I said, "was a beautiful piece of engineering," Marcus agreed. "The Corvan really know how to build things that last." "Well, used to know. Past tense seems more appropriate now." "How many?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "Of your crew. Most of them are alive. I'm not a monster, Thrix. I disabled life support selectively, used targeted neural dampeners to keep them unconscious. They will wake up with headaches and wounded pride, but they will live." "Why?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made my chitinous skin crawl. "Because somebody has to go home and tell the Corvan High Command what happened here. Somebody has to explain why their invasion fleet just disappeared." "Disappeared?" I forced myself to focus. "The fleet is spread across 12 systems. Even if you destroyed the advance force, you couldn't possibly." "Thrix," Marcus interrupted gently. "What do you think has been happening while you were unconscious?" He gestured toward a functioning display panel. The screen showed a tactical overview of our invasion force. Or rather, where our invasion force used to be. Red indicators marked the locations of dead ships, all of them red. Every single one. 18 hours, Marcus said conversationally. "That's how long it took humanity to remember how to wage war. Your species has been conquering worlds for millennia. We have been practicing for about a day and a half." "Impossible," I whispered. "We had 300 ships, battle-tested crews, superior technology." "Oh, your technology is impressive," Marcus nodded. "Shame you never learned to fight someone who fights back properly." I stared at the display. "You are lying. This has to be some kind of trick." "Am I?" Marcus reached over and changed the display. Now it showed a broader view of local space. What I saw made my blood turn to ice in my veins. Human ships. Dozens of them. Ships that shouldn't exist. Ships that looked like they had been designed by someone who had spent a very long time thinking about how to kill things efficiently. "The Emma class was just the beginning," Marcus explained. "You see, when we ended the Unity Wars, we didn't just decommission our weapons. We improved them, constantly, obsessively. We told ourselves it was just theoretical research, academic exercises. But really, we were preparing for the day someone forced us to remember who we used to be." "The other ships," I managed. "How many?" "Well, let's see." Marcus counted on his fingers like he was tallying grocery items. "The Apollo-class heavy cruisers, the Athena-class carriers, the Ares-class battleships. Oh, and the Hades-class dreadnoughts. Can't forget those. They are the ones that make grown Corvan admirals soil their environmental suits." "You are insane." "Probably," Marcus agreed cheerfully. "Losing your family tends to do that to a person. But you know what's really insane? The fact that every single one of those ships is named after someone we lost. Someone your species killed." He pointed to different ships on the display. "The Lucy's Dream, the Jamie's Hope, the Emma's Fury, the Haven's Light. Each one represents a human life you thought didn't matter. Each one was built by someone who decided that forgetting was a luxury we could no longer afford." "This is impossible," I repeated, but the words sounded hollow, even to me. "Your species was peaceful. Farmers, merchants, civilians. Were we?" Marcus asked. "Or were we just soldiers who had learned to grow crops?" The display changed again. This time it showed Earth itself. The blue marble hung in space, beautiful and serene. But orbiting it were structures that definitely hadn't been there when we started this war. "Shipyards," Marcus said. "Weapons platforms, defense stations. All of it built in the last 18 hours by a species that you thought was helpless." He paused. "Turns out, when you threaten human children, humans become very motivated to work quickly." "You couldn't have built all this in 18 hours, I protested. "Built?" Marcus laughed. "Thrix. We didn't build anything. We just stopped pretending we had forgotten how to be what we used to be. Every civilian manufacturing facility was designed to be converted to military production. Every peaceful research station was actually developing weapons. Every retired soldier was just waiting for someone to give them a reason to remember. You planned this, I realized. All of it. The peace, the retirement, the farming. It was all a lie. No, Marcus said, and for the first time he sounded sad. It wasn't a lie. We really were at peace. We really had put down our weapons. We really were just trying to live normal lives. But we are human tricks. We are very good at preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. The ship shuddered around us. Through the hole in the bulkhead, I could see one of the human vessels approaching. It was sleek, deadly, and beautiful in the way that only a perfectly designed weapon can be. What happens now? I asked. Now. Marcus stood up and walked over to the display. Now you go home. You tell the Corvan High Command exactly what happened here. You explain that humanity isn't interested in conquest or expansion or glory. We just want to be left alone to raise our families and grow our crops. And if they don't listen? Marcus's expression didn't change. Then you explain that the species that ended the Unity Wars by developing weapons so terrible they scared themselves into peace has been spending the last century making those weapons even more terrible. You are threatening genocide. No, Marcus said quietly. I'm promising consequences. There's a difference. Your species chose to wage war on civilians, to kill children, to turn families into ash. We are simply ensuring that choice has a price. The human ship was docking with our vessel now. I could hear the sound of airlocks cycling, boots on metal decking, but strangely, I felt no fear. These weren't the sounds of an invasion force. They were the sounds of professionals doing their job. The funny thing is, Marcus continued, you could have won this war. You had approached us honestly, explained your needs, offered fair trade agreements. We would have helped you. Humans are remarkably generous when you don't start by murdering our families. Too late for that now, I said. Is it? Marcus looked at me with those unsettling blue eyes. Your species needs resources. We have them. Your people are starving on overcrowded worlds. We have empty planets. Your technology is stagnant. We have innovations that could revolutionize your society. After what we did, after what you did, Marcus agreed, because that's what humans do, tricks. We forgive, we help, we build instead of destroy, but we never, ever forget. And we never let anyone threaten our children again. The medical bay door opened. Human soldiers entered, their weapons lowered, but ready. They moved with the fluid precision of people who had been born to warfare and then spent decades trying to forget how good they were at it. Sir, one of them said to Marcus, the Corvan survivors are secure. Minimal casualties. Medical teams are treating the wounded. Good, Marcus nodded. Prepare a transport for Admiral Thrix. He has a message to deliver. Sir, the soldier acknowledged. What about the fleet? Send them home, Marcus said simply. All of them. Every Corvan ship. Every crew member. Every piece of equipment. Let them tell their story, and the defensive positions. Maintain them, Marcus replied, just in case someone else gets ideas about testing human resolve. The soldier saluted and left. Marcus turned back to me. You are really going to let us go? I asked. Of course, Marcus said. What would be the point of keeping you? We are not conquerors, Thrix. We are just parents who got tired of having our children threatened. The High Command will want revenge. Then the High Command will learn the same lesson you did, Marcus said, that there are some species you don't threaten, some lines you don't cross, some sleepy little civilizations that you should just leave alone. And if they don't learn, Marcus smiled one last time. It was the same smile that had chilled me in the interrogation chamber, but now I understood what it meant. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't madness. It was the expression of someone who had lost everything and found something worse than death to replace it. Then they will discover that the species that scared itself into peace, a century ago has spent that century getting really, really good at making peace permanent. 3 days later, I stood before the Corvin High Command and delivered Marcus Kane's message. I told them about the human ships, about the hidden weapons, about the sleeping dragon they had awakened. Most of them didn't believe me, but some did, and those few made the decision that saved our species from extinction. The war ended not with a bang, but with a simple message transmitted across the galaxy: leave the humans alone. Because sometimes the most terrifying thing about a weapon isn't how destructive it is. It's how much mercy it shows you before it decides to stop being merciful. Marcus Kane returned to farming after the war ended. He grows the best tomatoes in his sector, I'm told. He has a new family now, a wife who makes him laugh, children who complain about runny eggs. But I know the truth. He's not just a farmer. He's a human who learned to forgive, but never forgot how to fight. And that's the most dangerous thing in the universe. The years that followed taught us lessons we never wanted to learn. The human Mercy Doctrine became the most studied military strategy in galactic history, not because of its tactical brilliance, but because of its psychological warfare implications. You see, when you completely destroy an enemy, they can't tell others what happened. But when you show overwhelming force, and then choose mercy, every survivor becomes a living testament to your power. Every freed prisoner becomes a walking advertisement for your restraint. Every spared life becomes a reminder that you could have chosen differently. Elegant, High Command called it, terrifying, was what they really meant. The Corvin became inadvertent ambassadors for human capability, not because we wanted to, but because every species we encountered asked the same question: what are these humans really like? And we had to tell them. We had to explain that the species growing flowers in their gardens had weapons that could crack planets, that the people writing children's books had tactical manuals that made our generals weep, that the civilization building hospitals and schools had enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. But more than that, we had to explain something even more unsettling. They chose not to use it. The Zelani Republic learned this the hard way. 3 years after our war ended, they decided to test human resolve. They attacked a human trade convoy in neutral space, killed 200 civilians, and demanded territorial concessions. The human response was swift and surgical. Not a single Zelani died, not one. Instead, their entire war fleet simply stopped working. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of military equipment across their entire empire went dark simultaneously for exactly 24 hours. When their systems came back online, they found a single message waiting on every screen: we could have left them off. Next time, we might choose differently. The Zelani surrendered before the day was over. How? Their ambassador asked me when they came seeking advice. How do you fight an enemy that can disable your entire military infrastructure without firing a shot? You don't, I told him. You apologize, you make reparations, and you never, ever threaten their civilians again. But surely there must be limits to their capabilities, he pressed. Weaknesses we could exploit. I showed him the intelligence reports, the same reports that had been circulating through classified channels for years. Reports that painted a picture of human society that defied every principle of military science. Their farmers held advanced degrees in engineering and weapons design. Their teachers were former military strategists who had simply chosen to educate children instead of destroying enemies. Their doctors had medical knowledge that bordered on the miraculous, gained from treating wounds that no species should have survived. Every human civilian is a potential soldier, I explained. Every human settlement is a potential fortress. Every human world is a potential weapons platform. They don't have a military ambassador. They are a military that chose to pretend otherwise. Then why don't they conquer? He asked. With that kind of power, they could rule the galaxy. That was the question that haunted every species that encountered humanity. The question that kept military analysts awake at night and caused philosophers to question the nature of power itself. Because, I said slowly, they genuinely don't want to. The ambassador stared at me like I had grown a second head. Impossible. No species achieves that level of capability without the desire to use it. No species except humans. I corrected. They built all of this not because they wanted to conquer, but because they wanted to ensure no one could ever threaten their children again. The moment they achieved that goal, they stopped. They went back to growing tomatoes and writing poetry. But the temptation, the ambassador insisted. The power. Surely some faction within their government must desire expansion. I pulled up another file. This one showed the human governmental structure, democratic councils, elected representatives, term limits, peaceful transitions of power, leadership positions that were treated as public service rather than personal advancement. Their leaders, I said, are accountable to farmers and teachers and doctors, people who have seen war, who remember what it costs, and who have decided that the price is too high to pay for anything less than absolute necessity. You are telling me that the most powerful military force in the galaxy is controlled by civilians who don't want to use it. I'm telling you that the most powerful military force in the galaxy is controlled by people who understand exactly what it means to use it, and that understanding is what makes them more dangerous than any conqueror who ever lived. The ambassador left that day with a new understanding of human nature. He also left with a recommendation that his government immediately cease all military research and focus on diplomatic relations with Earth. They followed his advice. Smart species learn from other people's mistakes. But the truly fascinating thing about the post-war period wasn't how other species reacted to human power. It was how humans reacted to having revealed it. Marcus Kane became something of a celebrity in certain circles. Military historians wanted to study his tact. Weapons designers wanted to understand his technology. Politicians wanted to understand his strategy. He declined every interview, rejected every offer, and returned to his farm. But he did agree to speak at the Academy of Military Sciences once. Just once. The entire auditorium was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all eager to hear from the man who had single-handedly ended the war. You want to know about strategy? He asked the crowd. You want to understand tact? You want to learn about weapons and warfare and the art of victory? The audience leaned forward expectantly. Then you are asking the wrong questions, Marcus said simply. The question isn't how to win a war. The question is how to make war so terrible that no one wants to fight it in the first place. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Corvan, Solani, Thraxians, Valdorians. Species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of conquest. My species learned that lesson the hard way, he continued. We became so good at killing each other that we scared ourselves into peace. We built weapons so terrible that using them would have been victory and defeat simultaneously. So we chose to stop. We chose to grow crops instead of graveyards. We chose to build schools instead of battlefields. But you kept the weapons, someone called out from the audience. We kept the knowledge, Marcus corrected. We kept the capability. We kept the understanding that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of choice. Every day, we choose not to be what we could be. Every day, we choose to be better than our worst impulses. And when that choice is taken away, another voice asked. Marcus's expression grew distant. When someone forces us to remember what we used to be, we remind them why we chose to stop. The auditorium fell silent. The war didn't end because we were stronger, Marcus said finally. It ended because we were terrifying, not because of what we did, but because of what we chose not to do. That's the lesson you should take from this. The most powerful weapon isn't the one that destroys your enemies. It's the one that convinces them never to become your enemies in the first place. He left the stage without taking questions. Years later, when I was asked to write the definitive account of the war, I struggled with how to end it. How do you conclude a story about a species that won by choosing mercy? How do you explain the psychology of a civilization that defeated its enemies by showing them exactly how thoroughly they could be defeated? In the end, I decided to visit Marcus Kane one more time. I found him in his garden, tending to his tomatoes. His new wife was teaching their daughter how to plant seeds. His son was helping repair a broken irrigation system. "Thrix," he said, looking up as I approached. I wondered when you'd come by. I'm writing a book, I told him, about the war, about what happened, about what it means, and you want to know how it ends. I want to know if it ever really ends, I said, or if we are all just waiting for the next test of human resolve. Marcus smiled, the same smile that had once terrified me. But now I understood what it meant. It wasn't the smile of a predator, it was the smile of a shepherd, who had learned that sometimes protecting the flock meant reminding the wolves exactly why they should stay away. The war ended. Thrix, he said. But the peace, that's something we have to choose every day. Every time we plant a seed instead of building a bomb. Every time we teach a child instead of training a soldier. Every time we choose to be human instead of choosing to be what we could be. And if someone makes that choice for you again, Marcus looked at his family, his garden, his quiet life, then they will learn the same lesson you did, that there are some species you don't threaten, some lines you don't cross, some sleeping giants that you should just leave alone. He turned back to his tomatoes, but mostly, they will learn that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the species that wages war. It's the species that chooses peace and has the power to make that choice stick. That's how my book ends, not with victory or defeat, but with the simple truth that the most powerful force in the galaxy is a species that grew tired of being afraid and decided to make sure no one else ever had to be afraid of them, unless they chose to be. And that choice, more than any weapon or strategy or tactic, is what makes humanity the most dangerous species in the universe, because they are dangerous enough to choose not to be.